The dangers of industrial complex. What? A panel hosted by Senator Roger Marshall and the conservative advocacy group American Principles Project at the U.S. Capitol last week discussed the negative impacts of the burgeoning gender industrial complex. Interesting. Walmart to scale back woke policies. Nah. Looking forward to this one. Well, hopefully some of us are. I always end up reeling for days or weeks after I have conversations like this.
Hello.
Hey.
How you doing?
Oh, wonderful. Been a busy week. How are you?
I'm okay. I've been having a lot of headaches, but
Us
it
too.
is what it is. Really?
Yeah, like a lot. Like almost every
I've had
day.
like a non-stop headache for like 3 or 4 days now.
Weird. Yeah, Kat and I were just talking about it because I came home from work just like drained because my head is just killing me. And it's been like the past week we've been talking about it. Weird. Do you have any idea what yours are from?
I thought it maybe like my wisdom tooth coming in, but
Okay.
I don't know. Like my husband also isn't feeling great, so I'm not sure. I thought it may be allergies too, but it's pretty late in the season for allergies.
Right. Interesting. Huh. Yeah, Kat said same, all caps. It's been like a predominant theme. Is anybody else having headaches? Is this a widespread issue?
From what I remember.
Yeah. Oh, Ghost.
Sorry.
No, you're good. David, hello, sir.
How's Kat doing?
She's good. She's showing. It's very cute. It's very cute. I love it. And she came home the other day. She's going to be mad that I said this. But she came home the other day with a really cute little baby outfit. Little infant baby outfit. Because we're about to like announce it to all of the public. We told Zaya on Friday.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so we're going to do a little reveal thing. It'll be cute. It's fun, but she's beautiful.
When's the due date?
Early May, but Kat thinks it'll be late April. We're not exactly sure because the time we couldn't really figure out when it happened. So that's our best guess. Is around there.
I think the first pregnancy usually takes a little bit longer.
Does it? Okay. And then the later ones is quicker. Your body like knows what's up.
Almost like it paved the way.
Right.
And they tend to come out faster the second time around, but
I mean, it makes sense. The first time, like, good guy. I think everything that's happening in there, like, good lord. It doesn't surprise me that your body's like, okay, I'm gonna take my sweet ass time and figure this out. The autodidactic layman. I just saw Animals as Leaders on Sunday night, and I've been revisiting their catalog and found they have a song called For Fear of... Okay, that's fitting. The Fear of Boundless, Eternal, or Infinite. Interesting. Who is that? Who are you? Are you somebody that I know and I just don't know your YouTube name? Either way, glad to have you. Nat said, I'm reeling about it constantly, the topic. So looking for some potential answers or relief. Oh, girl, you know I don't provide those. I just make it worse. The fear is crippling, and I have the hardest time imagining what the Bible tells us comes next. Anxiety plus guilt equals not fun. Have your hospital right. Oh, the go bag, the hospital go bag, 5 weeks early. Jesus.
I put that song, I don't know how to say that word. Apeirophobia.
Yeah, your guess is
I
good
put
as
that
mine.
on my listen list.
Yeah, I want to check it out. I've been obsessing over that song the past 2 days because of how well it matches the concept. Interesting. We've never met. I just found you on YouTube a long time ago. Fair enough. Well, good to have you. Good to have you. Well, I guess let's get into it then. I have a bit more than normal. So fear of death and dying is the general line of thought. And it can go a lot of different ways. So I try to be pretty broad. As usual, just rudely interrupt me. Don't let me keep going so that I don't keep throwing content out there. Just like halt. Stop me in my tracks. This is the outline that I put together. So why are humans afraid of death? And I from super secular, meaning no thoughts of life after death whatsoever, all the way to strict religiosity, where we have extremely bound context of life after death. So we get the full spectrum. So I've got 8 of them here, of the reasons why. The first would be biological instinct for survival. More on the secular side, because I feel like these are things Christians don't think a lot about, and I think it's a mistake, because it's undoubtedly true. But humans and everything else that's living on Earth, we have this innate instinct to persevere, to continue surviving. It's in everything that we do. It's the basis of our existence, is to continue to survive. It's the core and the crux of why we do absolutely everything that we do. The instinct helps us protect us from danger and ensures our survival long-term, short-term, which can manifest in a bunch of different ways, but it manifests, like Nat was saying, oftentimes as fear when faced with the idea of death, because it's so contrary to what we're wired to do, which is to survive. The second one is fear of the unknown, which I think is probably one of the biggest ones for people from just my anecdotal experience talking to people. Death is commonly perceived as the great unknown, and the uncertainty about what happens after the end of your human bodily life, therefore, like, provokes this extreme anxiety in people. Like, will it hurt? What comes after? Is there an afterlife? Which is tied to what comes after. But it creates like this intense unease in people. There was a period of my life that I've mostly moved away from, where I would not sleep for hours and hours and hours oftentimes if I'd get this stuck in my head. I'd start thinking about death. I think it's common. I think like a lot of people do. But I think most people just ignore it. I feel like it's a spectrum, and most people are on one side or the other. Total ignoring.
Point number 7?
Or like stressing. Number 2.
Oh, yeah.
Fear of the unknown. Like
I used to not be able to sleep because I thought I was going to die in my sleep.
That's interesting. I never had that. I would just think of like, even if in 30 years I was going to die, the thought of this ending would cause me like extreme anxiety.
Well, have you guys had surgery?
Yes, I've been.
I have, yeah.
Yeah, I know. Like they give you like a little thing of like anti-anxiety things like right before.
Yeah.
To kind of help ease that, because that thing is most definitely there. It's almost like
mine
standard.
smelled like bubble gum.
What?
They gave me like a thing to put me out, but it smells like bubble gum.
Oh,
it smelled like bubble gum. That's the last thing I remember.
Wow.
I've heard about. Yeah, actually, there's like, it's not, flavor is not the right word, I guess, scent, but yeah, they started doing the anesthetic with like scents of food. I think because it's comforting or calming, I would assume.
Maybe it's no, I've had the one where it looks like glue and it's in your IV and it burns a little.
Oh.
You're like, ow. And I think I've had the gas.
I think going under is scary because you're like, you think that it like makes you feel like you are slipping into that in between. I feel like it's different than sleep.
I did slip in between.
I remember. Yeah, I remember a story. And I've read other stories like that. And then I've also read stories where people have gone under and then they didn't wake up, which is just horrifying and adds to the anxiety of the people who are afraid of that.
Well, thanks.
Not great. Well, you made it and you had a
but I have more.
I know,
I'm just pending.
I know. I mean, most of us at some point will go under if you haven't already. It just is a thing I think is going to become more and more common as we become less and less healthy. Number 3, loss of identity and control. This is one I've personally struggled with too in the past, is the concept of like, how much of you is you? How much of you, because most of us, or all of us, we believe in some kind of afterlife, maybe on a spectrum, but how much of you moves on? What part of you moves on? What does that look like? What is the function? Like, that's a very stressful concept. Death involves the loss of personal identity, at least from a secular point of view. And then there's a spectrum for Christians, but possessions for sure. And relationships is the other one that people stress about. I stress about that with like my kid and with Kat for sure. Does that just end? It just becomes irrelevant in the grand scheme of things. The idea of losing control over your life and existence is unsettling. Thank you, baby. It's an unsettling thing. But where is the line between what we are here and what moves on then, I think causes a lot of people stress. The 4th one, pain and suffering. I know some of us can identify with this too. People may fear the process of dying, whether it be slow or long, just the process itself, when the rational reality is that every single day you're dying. It's not a super fun thing to think about, but every day I started turning gray on the side of my head, and it was a rash reminder that I am slowly dying. It just is what it is. But we associate the thought with the potential of physical pain or illness or prolonged suffering of some kind. Loss of mental clarity
or
is
tragedy.
Another big one. What's that?
Or like tragedy, like sudden tragedy.
Yeah, absolutely. Scary stuff. So pain and suffering, big one, I feel like, for a lot of people. Separation from loved ones, alluded to a minute ago, but death, it means, on a spectrum, depending on what you believe, that you'll be eternally forever separated from family, friends, anybody that you knew or loved. The fear of the personal loss and the person no longer being there that you were tied to is a scary thing. And then it also like begs the question, I don't know if we want to go down that rabbit hole, but what is real? Like, what is real? Twist into that, but I'll save us from that rabbit hole. Number 6, cultural and religious influences, which will influence most or all of us. In most cases, our culture, and then oftentimes the religion, the teachings about judgment, the teachings about hell or reincarnation or heaven, they can heighten the anxiety for a lot of people, or they can act as security for a lot of people. It just kind of depends on what your beliefs of all those things are, because that's
what Nat and Mystic are talking about right now.
Oh, are they?
In the comments.
What is it?
Okay, well, let me see.
Oh yeah, like where some of us grew up with, like Carrie's mother.
Wait, who's talking about it and where?
In the YouTube comments.
Oh, Ruth, okay.
Mystic asks, like, why is she less afraid to die when she stopped believing in traditional Christian afterlife doctrine? I wonder how many other people feel the same way.
I get that. It makes sense to me. When I was I'll call it a devout atheist, because I was like very anti-religion, I found great comfort in everything being irrelevant. If it's all irrelevant and you die and nothing happens, what is there to be afraid of? If you just die and cease to exist across the board in every function, the fear of that is irrational.
That scares me.
Right.
Yeah, then what's your reason for being moral?
Well, right, which is a different, yeah, for sure. It pushes you into that line of thinking too, of like morality, and then you have the great argument of the Christians and the atheists of subjective and objective morality. But just on its face, though, like I at first found great comfort as an atheist that when I die, I'm just nothing. So there's nothing to fear. My brain exists as long as this is all functioning, and when it stops to function, it just disappears. There's no pain, there's no suffering, there's no judgment, there's no hell, there's no nothing. You are just nothing. And I found comfort in that for a long time. And then it flipped at some point, and I lost all of the comfort in that. Because I'm like, what a freaking horrible, horrible thing. It may not be scary, but it was really depressing. And it was hard.
Like heartbreaking.
Heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And then made me rethink everything. Then why does any of this matter? Why does anything matter? Why wouldn't, like you kind of alluded to, why wouldn't I just seek pleasure for the rest of my life? Like, why would I ever do anything outside of that? Because there's no way to make that make sense if we're all just nothing. Nat replied to Mystic and said, I think I'm the opposite. I wish I could make myself believe in heaven. Wish I could make myself believe in heaven or an afterlife, but I literally can't get myself to. And I feel like I'd be less afraid if I could imagine it. You don't think there's an afterlife? Nat? Huh.
Like maybe conceptually, but like not hard to like fully.
Yeah, she's Catholic.
Yeah, but you know,
I get what you're saying.
Like, because I'm similar, Nat, where I can conceptualize it, but it's hard to like feel like, because we don't know, so it's like it's hard to be like, yeah, that's what it's gonna be like, and I'm not, and I'm comfortable with that. Like it's.
But you'll never see loved ones again. I think that's the thing that is the most heartbreaking, you know, like it really is goodbye.
If there is no afterlife?
Correct.
Right, but what about if there is? Because I don't think there's a...
Oh, yeah.
Is there a lot of biblical support that relationships carry over in any sense? I
don't know about that, but I can say in terms of experiences, not just for myself, but so many others. I mean, like, I have questions in terms of like, what is life? Because I heard pets are there or animals can be there, but
from where?
But
where does that come from?
I think that's just people's experiences
of dying.
Yeah, and just the whole process, like, yeah. So, but like I don't know if anyone's pet goldfish is there.
Anything that you can remember is there.
That's the other thing, is I heard there is some people, when it comes to the afterlife, they start to like lose their memory of like who they are, what they are, and who and what everyone else is. That's a little
That might be the case, which is freaky.
Right. But that tends to be for the ones that are like, I don't know, gone a little bit longer, I guess.
Meaning there's an age to it. So like under
no,
that,
like you're like how long were you dead for, I guess?
Or you mean if they come back, or when you die for good?
Right. When they come back.
Okay.
It seems like the ones that are gone the longest are the ones where they're like, oh, I started to not, remember certain things. And I was like, oh, shit. And that's why some of them will even come back with like amnesia and stuff. And it takes a while for their...
Couldn't that just be explained? Like, isn't it pretty commonly known that the longer your brain is not firing the way it's supposed to be, like it causes literal brain damage?
Yeah, and it may not be returned. Yeah, that is true.
I'd have to look into that. It's something I've never really looked into. Like I've heard here and there stories, but I guess I'm curious, like how many people statistically have legally died and then come back? And then of those people, I'd be curious to see how many, like what the ratio is of people who say they had some kind of experience. Like seeing or hearing or feeling like they saw behind the veil.
Yeah.
I
got obsessed with it after
that
surgery that I had. Yeah. Because I think I said something like, hey, this weird thing happened, and someone called it an NDE, and I was like, what the hell is that? And then, but there's a couple things like on Netflix. I think it's called like After Death, and then I think there's another one called Health, I think, or Healing. Maybe it's on Amazon Prime, where it talks a little bit about, after death. And I hate saying it, but not everything lines up with Christian theology, and that's just a fact. So
nothing all the way lines up. I think we
I know, and then
that.
I wonder about that stuff too, but I mean, whatever.
Never ends. And that's what I wish I could trust those experiences, but I just can't. How do we know the experiences they have wasn't just before or after they were announced legally dead? Yeah, I get what you're saying. I have issues with those two, but I think it's mostly for me just that I'm cynical. What was that?
I mean, I wasn't even dead because I didn't want to ask, but then someone suggested I ask, and I asked my doctor if anything went wrong. But, I will say he did say it was risky beforehand, and he asked if I had a will. That I remember thinking was kind of weird. And then the other thing, too, was 2 months before that, I started sending things to my sister-in-law and my aunt just in case anything happened to me pertaining to the kids, and I had never done that before. Mind you, I've had 17 surgeries where I've gone under, but for some reason that time...
Yeah, I wonder what the differentiator was that time.
There has to be something in you that's aware whether you're conscious.
Right. I mean, Kat brought up in YouTube the psychedelic end of it, because you hear a lot of stuff like that from that culture of humanity on the psychedelic side. I wonder if it's any of the same stuff in your brain. I would assume maybe partially is. Same things are firing or connecting in some sense.
They say that DMT gets released from your brain when you die.
It does, yeah.
That's why people take it.
Yeah, it does. So that when they take it in a much higher dose.
But sometimes I wonder, is that just part of the dying process? And they're just, they're just finding evidence for it neurologically?
What do you mean? That what is a part of... You mean like the hallucination and whatnot?
Yeah, we say it's hallucinations, but let's just say it is a reality, but it's documented neurologically as if it's a hallucination.
Well, right. That's kind of like the theory of a lot of them, is that they're basically forcing this portion of the process of death to happen now. And it's why a lot of them will share... Kat and I were just reading something about this, but a lot of them will share the same experiences. And by a lot of them, I mean thousands of people.
Yeah.
Will report the same stuff.
Yeah, that can't be hallucinating.
Right, I agree.
Sounds, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they're seeing beyond something. There's no other way to... Right. There's no other way. The clowns, the elves, the snake, there's some other stuff. Kat, we were literally just reading about it last
Clowns?
night. Weird stuff. Weird stuff. But it's...
They were seeing clowns?
There's a whole bunch of stories of the same, different people seeing the same thing as jesters and clowns.
I don't want to see clowns.
Thousands of people.
Maybe they were going somewhere else. I don't know.
Well, there's an argument there too, and the same for same for other substances, where people you hear reports of people seeing what seems like a very positive side of Beyond the Veil, and then a very negative side of Beyond the Veil. It seems like it drastically differs on the individual and what time, when they specifically did it. It's a lot of variation. Go said, I'd like to know what people's definition of death is, being that's a part of the equation. It's a good question. If anybody who's in YouTube chat, just a sentence, describe what your definition of death is. That's an important, that's a valid, important thing to point out. While we wait, let me burn through the rest of these. Separation of loved ones, we did. So 6, cultural, we did that. Cultural and religious influences. Existential fear. So the philosophical questions about the meaning of life, mortality, the significance of your existence. It creates dread for a lot of people, which oftentimes then leads to the fear and the anxiety because of how they perceive what they perceive the end to be. The eighth, fear of incompletion. People often worry about leaving things unfinished. They feel like they didn't, especially I feel like a lot of Christians probably, people who feel like they have a mission of some kind, like they have a purpose specifically, the fear of not following through with that, or maybe the fear that you followed through with the wrong thing, that you didn't do all the things you wanted to do, you didn't act and treat people the way that you wanted to, you leave this window open of things you never got to complete. So some of the core questions, and I'll include ghosts in this because it is certainly a core question. Why are we here? Humans seek purpose and meaning in life. We just talked about that. The thought of death can make one question whether life has inherent value or if it's ultimately insignificant, which branches off a lot of those 8 that we went over. What happens when we die? Without any of the answers of what happens after death, anxiety, fear, depression, things like that. Does anything I do really matter? Which we also touched on too. So we'll just burn right past it. What is the actual significance of life, especially if you don't have some sort of religiosity, regardless really of what it is? Factors that amplify existential fear. I kind of singled out a few of the 8 that I assumed, and I think rightfully from reading and now talking, that I feel like everybody would kind of hover around. The awareness of mortality. Humans are unique in their ability to reflect on their mortality. The awareness creates a tension between the desire for immortality and the reality of inevitable death. Confronting What's that?
No, I just said heck yeah.
Right. I feel like it's most people, especially if they take a minute to think. I can't imagine a lot of people with just aging huge, yeah, or something happening, severe illness, hospital visits, things like that will heighten that and make you ever more aware of it. I just can't imagine any functioning, thinking person that doesn't at least somewhat frequently like dwell on these things, unless you're just flat out ignoring the reality of it. Death is death of the body. Okay, let's see if there's a...
I think death is like the eternal separation maybe of the conscious from the human body.
I'm in that zone myself, yeah. Okay, Nat said, I think it's when the brain stops functioning completely. That means 99% of people are dead. That would be brain dead, right? But I mean, the brain dies, the body dies, no? Without intervention.
Your organs are still functioning because it's involuntary type, like your heart will still beat, stuff like that.
I was under the impression after an amount of time with no brain activity and no intervention, you're just laying there. I thought it all would follow suit. Well, I'm not a doctor. I could totally be wrong.
Okay, if we're talking like
because the brain dictates how organs function and etc. So when the brain goes, everything goes.
No, to some degree, which is why you can have...
Not immediately, but it does go, because if you're not hooked up to machines, then how are you going to live?
That's exactly what I am saying, though, is you are hooked up to machines. So
that's why I said without intervention. If the brain dies with no intervention, I don't know, but I feel like it was like within a couple of days or something, then the body was shut down. So brain death with no intervention would lead to total death with no intervention. Otherwise, isn't that technically what a vegetable is? Is when the brain is mostly gone and they, keep everything pumping through intervention. Okay. So that would be death or postponed death. I'm not a scientifically savvy person, but I'd say there's some medical definition out there relating to which I'd agree with. You're probably right about that. David said death is death of the body. I think he's alluding to something there. Body decomposing, I mean. Oh, soul leaving your body becoming part of the earth again, and then body okay, I gotcha.
The whole thing, though, right? Because, I mean, we lose limbs or body parts.
Right. I mean, I think the body's irrelevant, personally.
Yeah, I did see this quote the other day that said, "You are not a body with a soul. You're a soul with a body," or
Right.
something.
That's exactly how I think your body is irrelevant. That's why I think if you lose legs or anything aesthetic for sure, but even body function, if you don't function, you know, what would be called normal. I think it's totally irrelevant. I think life
I don't
starts and
know.
dies in your brain.
You hear about people grieving though too, like when they lose limbs and stuff. I know, like as someone who's had parts of my stuff cut out, it's a little depressing.
Well, no, for sure, but it's not death.
No, but I mean, it's not completely irrelevant, I guess is my point.
Irrelevant to like fair. I'll clarify. Like irrelevant in terms of this topic. So like life and death. I think the body is irrelevant. Meaning like if your brain, I guess going back to what we were saying, if the brain stops working, the body will eventually stop working with no intervention. If you reverse that, it's not necessarily true. You could keep the brain functioning with much less intervention. You could lose
Hey
much
Joe,
of your body.
can I push back on your body is irrelevant thing?
Yeah, go.
How do we create memories? What do we have to do something. We have to leave, we have to go out, we have to climb mountains, we have to do whatever we do with a body which creates memory.
Do you have to?
And bodies, well, I mean, number one, bodies are required to create more brains to have more experiences, so bodies are really important.
For sure. But even the memory bit, I feel like if I was going to be an ass about this, couldn't somebody who has no function whatsoever, no arms, no fingers, no feet, no nothing, but their brain was active, they can't talk, say they can't even hear, but they can see and experience. They could still, with intervention from other people, like granted, they could experience and like create memories. It'll just be different from what the normal person would have. But I get your point.
Yeah.
I agree. Yeah.
They're relying on other people's bodies.
Yeah,
fair.
Yeah.
Okay. Fair enough.
And you're also young and healthy, so it's like once upon a time you were, and then now you're not. It's a whole different. She misses her gallbladder. Yeah, I wonder about that.
I guess I think consciousness, I suppose, I put a huge emphasis on like the conscious. And so, yeah, maybe I stand corrected. Maybe to say the body is irrelevant is probably not fair. That's not fair.
In this life, it's not. Or in this
right.
In this life, it's relevant.
It's right. Yeah, that's a better way to put it. It's relevant here. It's irrelevant in the grand scheme or the eternal, because the body dies. In every possible sense, it dies. In horrifying ways, it dies and becomes nothing. But most of us believe there is something that goes on, but it seems to be in no way necessarily tied to the body. In the long term. In the short term, obviously it is.
I watched a video and this person was talking about her near-death experience, and she drew a picture of what she saw, or I don't know how she knew what she looked like, but she said she knew what she looked like in the afterlife, or like when she was having her experience, and it looked like a tadpole thing.
That's horrifying.
Yeah.
I don't want to become a tadpole.
The only thing,
sperm or what?
I know it's
like just some blob type.
Yeah,
shape.
girl, that's
Yes.
Dang, she regressed all the way back.
right. Yeah, it doesn't sound like her mom was involved yet.
Oh my God. If we retain some degree of consciousness after our brain dies, that suggests we are transferred to another brain, a communal brain. Ghost, put that in the chat.
And you all know what I think the communal brain is.
Say it for anybody new.
Feel.
Yeah. Yep.
That's why you see your loved ones, because we're all hanging out in the same spot.
Yeah, I like that theory.
Oh my gosh.
There's comfort in that. I don't think death is real. It's more like a player leaving this avatar for this level and moving to the upgraded one in the next level. That's, yeah, in a sense, I'm in that realm. Yeah. Death is when the body ceases to function. I think it's when the brain death is irreversible, then the rest follows. The layman, for short. Yes, the heart flatlines and there is no measurements on the EEG for the brain function. Right. I think so. Legal death. I think we've described what legal death is. No measurements.
So how many of us here have mourned the death of one of ourselves when they die?
Right.
Well, okay,
Because
but
they're dying all the time.
All
yeah.
day.
Yeah. So, okay, I know Jules was joking about the whole gallbladder thing, and my daughter said she doesn't care about her gallbladder either. But there was some things I was concerned about losing, and I remember like grieving that. I know women who've had double mastectomies, and that messes with them. So I don't know if it has to do with like our identity, like as a woman. So I don't know if a guy losing his testicles, if that would mess with him.
Well, right, but why? Like trail that back. Why?
That's what I'm saying, because it's part of your I am a woman.
Right.
Like I nursed my children with this part. I gave birth to those. So I don't know how it is for you fellas. Like,
I mean,
your tadpoles came from those parts.
Probably less for men, but like same concept. I don't know. I think for men, like speaking for all men inappropriately, I would say if it was aesthetically a problem or if it interacted with sexual function, it would be a problem. I don't think beyond that, a lot of guys would care, personally.
You'd be shooting blanks.
Right, but
I think when any function is lost, it's a sort of you go through a mourning process.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You lost a part of you.
Yeah.
Like regardless of what it was. But
it's a matter of familiarity. It's a matter of a lot of things.
Right. So different people will grieve in different ways to different degrees based on just how they perceive any of that. Now it's
maybe it has to do with your consciousness.
Say that again?
Maybe it has to do with like the consciousness, like what you're consciously aware of that is part of your identity. So someone who loses an appendix or a gallbladder, it's not necessarily part of your identity, but when you're looking at your outward appearance, like testicles, breasts, things like that.
I think outward appearance, and I think what Ghost said was right on too, is like the function. So I think if you have to lose your tonsils or something, if you don't feel it being used and you don't think about being used and there's no function, at least to you, like you said, consciously, then I doubt people really grieve that. I'm sure there's probably a statistic of people who do, but it's probably like a dramatically small number. I think when we lose something we see or we lose something we consciously use, I could see why people would grieve that for sure. And it does, like, it interacts with how you live your life, what you're able to do, certain things. It's totally understandable, for sure.
That's probably part of it, then, interaction.
But it's a small, minor version of feeling death, in a sense. Ghost?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, when you're getting sick more, you might miss your gallbladder and your appendix. Even though you can't see it in your tonsils, like it's all part of the immune system.
But you don't grieve it like we would when
not consciously.
Yeah, because like my daughter thought it was a joke, and so did Jules. But like if you think about it, like even when it comes to your senses, because it has to do with interacting with the world, right, and memories and different things like that. I think we would grieve if you can't hear anymore. You can't hear your kid's voice, a little baby giggle, your favorite song, or going blind, different things like that.
Yeah.
I think it has to do with
in a how to deal with loss simulator.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense.
At the end of the day, it's just loss constantly. And gain too, but
it's a ever moving in both directions game of life, for sure. And people grieve very different ways. A lot of people don't, don't struggle.
So what does everyone think heaven is? Because if we're talking about, this topic, and Christians will say, when I die, I go to heaven. Well, what does that mean? Because everyone has like a different idea of that. And like Mystic brought up something earlier. And I think it all relies on, what do we think heaven and hell are? What do we think life and death is? And I think it has to be well defined, because if it's not, people are just in disparate groups and it's hard to communicate.
It's the basis of all of it, right? Like, at least for this audience, like for us, for people who believe the things most of us at least believe, it's everything to understand what you believe about the concepts of heaven and hell. It is the answer to the question. Is why you're afraid or why you have trepidation around it, why it makes you anxious. It means something is not sorted in what you believe, or you believe something that doesn't provide the comfort that the Bible intended it to, or it's seemingly intended for it to provide. It's kind of the crux of everything. I think it's a good question. So anybody could type it or cut me off.
Well, and I think that Mystic stated earlier that the traditional evangelical heaven and hell is not helpful. And I think that is something I've wrestled with, like, after coming to Christianity and, like
damning people to hell type thing.
Yeah, and just, like, this, like, it's a fiery, burning pit forever and ever. And it's just so, like, it doesn't feel real. Like, it doesn't feel like it's actually, like...
It's like being dramatic.
I think Ghost said it was very cartoonish. Like, it's just, it doesn't... It doesn't sit right.
I think heaven has a software and a hardware component, just like this life does. And I think there's always going to be software and hardware. And I think people will separate into camps where they think heaven is physical and other people think it's software.
Yeah.
But I think it's both.
What do you mean by software?
I mean, like the underlying consciousness structure, like the thing that people conceive of
The spirit
when they
world.
die. Yeah, the spirit world, I suppose. That's software. So you're still going to be able to have a consciousness, but it's not going to be the same type of consciousness because our consciousness we have now is in a brain. That's why we experience things the way we do now. But
Right.
when people die, they still have some type of experience because I think their consciousness is anchored to Sheol, whatever that is, electromagnetic in nature.
So do you think it all just looks like patterns and fractals, or, like, do you ever think about what it looks like with that concept?
Well, look is a funny word, you know, it's relative.
Right. Why would it look like anything?
It would be a different type
who
of
won't have
sense.
eyes?
It's essentially like, it would be like asking, what do blind people see?
Right.
Right.
We've talked about this a bunch of times, but like the illogical nature of trying to view things outside of how this reality functions through the perception of how we perceive and, like, conceive things is on its face silly as hell. If you actually think about it, it's super silly to do that. It makes no damn sense. To assume that anything after this, when the thought of us dying in this reality, which in this reality seems like the end, but then in another sentence say, well, no, we go off to this other magical place. But I have to conceive of that other magical place through the lens of this reality. It's nonsensical. It makes absolutely no sense. So it's like, what does it look like? What will happen there? How will I feel? I don't know how much or if any of that would even apply, personally.
I think it's going to be very similar to dreams, but only while we're waiting. When we get put into a new body, I think it's time isn't going to be really a factor. I don't think. I think it's going to feel like time travel, just like when we wake up from a sleep.
Yeah. Do you think the
we
body
can't perceive the time pass?
Right. Do you think the new body is a human body? Is that what you're saying? Or do you think it's just a new vessel?
I don't know. It's going to be a new body. I don't know if I think the planet is a body. So body is a funny word. Like, we're going to be in something that filters consciousness, whatever that is. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah.
I do kind of wonder about that, because one of the very first thing I remembered with that in-between thing is I was like, holy shit, I don't have any pain, number one. And number two, I didn't realize how much pain I live with daily until you don't have it.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if that was like new, or if I was just Yeah.
Is anybody in here like kind of comfortable with death at this point or have less fear?
Yeah. For sure. Ruth and oh, there you go. I'm relatively comfortable
I was
with
like,
it.
Deuce,
Wait, pause. Whoever's talking, you're cutting off really, really bad. So try to leave and come back. Who is that? Uh-oh. Alright, whoever was talking, try again. It was super choppy. Oh no. Is it me?
You sound kind of choppy.
Okay.
Rodriguez, try to leave the room and come back.
You sound good.
Yeah, it's you.
Yeah, so golden.
Uh-oh.
And robotic.
Oh, I was just going to say, I've recently just grown very, very comfortable with death.
Why is that?
No fear at all.
How?
I suppose, there's obviously a bunch of reasons. I'm a little bit radical of a Christian, I suppose. But recently went through an experience, and don't want this to sound like a sob story. It really isn't. It's a beautiful story. I buried my son, and we haven't grieved like most people grieve, especially how most Christians grieve. I'm in the South, and there's an overwhelming sense of ancestor worship among Christians here. You drive past cemeteries and you see it everywhere. People love the dead more than they love the living around them. And I refuse to do that. I mean, we all perish. It's just a matter of when. So, having been given a true hope through Christ's resurrection, like we did get to see what the next body will look like. It's a human looking body, at least as far as we could see with our human eyes. Christ appeared to have in his resurrected form, a human body, but obviously he could pass through walls and reconfigure his appearance to make himself, on the Emmaus road, not be recognizable. But it was human-like, at least through our eyes. And so I know death is just a veil. It's just a moment that we're all going to pass through. And I'm not really scared of that. It's like jumping off a cliff, it's scary to take the step, but then it's a rush, and then there's an adventure on the other side.
Well said. Yeah. There's peace. People find peace. I mean, whether it's something like that, that's well thought out. That's well said. Like, it's very well conceptualized. And other people have more of a peace just from regardless, it is going to happen. So therefore, I'm not going to stress about it. Whether I die and go somewhere else, whether I die and, like Mystic was saying a minute ago in the chat, I become nothing as I was before I was born. If you believe those are the same thing, or if you believe, Ghost pointed out aptly, nothingness doesn't exist. But regardless of what you believe about what happens after, you will die. Period. So it's something to not stress about. Your stressing doesn't change anything. Mystic, you should be up. Oh. Okay, Mystic's in. Is anybody else comfortable with death? Is it just the two of us?
I've kind of accepted it, and I'm comfortable with it, I think. Like, I don't look out. I'm not wanting it to happen, but I'm not afraid of it either, I wouldn't say. I don't fear it.
And why do you not fear it? Like, what causes the sense of security?
Yeah, I look at it on like a way different level. Like it's a mind thing, more like hell is separation from God, and then heaven would be filled with the fruits of God, fruits of the Spirit. So like being disconnected from God, that's our own personal hell. Most people are walking around in hell right now, in my opinion. But I've done what I can every day to fill myself with the right spirits, the uncreated spirits of God. So I'm just going to move on from here. I'm not going to die, I don't think. My energy's going to move.
Right. So the thought of you not actually dying kind of provides a comfort. I feel like the underlying tone of that is what provides the comfort for most religious people, is that they believe that little thing, whatever it is, will continue on. And that's enough. Okay.
So I think death needs to be seen as a transformation, not a ceasing.
Right.
Exactly.
That's really what I think most people need to take
That's
away.
kind of fair.
It's a transfer. That's really all. It's a yeah.
Like I would.
Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say I was so excited to not be in pain. That's why I was like, oh my god, I don't want to be here. You know, like
Yeah.
I was consciously aware, like, hey, yeah, I have kids and blah blah blah, but like I just remember I was like, I just don't want to feel this way anymore.
I think a lot of people have that too. Like the situation and the circumstance is different, but I think a lot of people, once they grasp the concept and become comfortable with it, are grateful for the opportunity to move on to a different vessel because of whatever, something they dislike or, struggle with what they are right now. I think if I really had to dig down deep, I'd say I'm more scared of nothingness than hell. And that's like real bad. Something I need to figure out for sure. Now, a lot of talk about nothingness. What is nothingness? I'd like somebody to try to explain, like, what is your definition of nothingness? How would you describe it to somebody if you had to explain it?
I feel like we're faced with a binary choice, at least as, Christians. Like there might have been nothingness apart from God when it was, before the creation of the universe. But now we are faced with the binary of whatever your concept of hell is and whatever your concept of heaven is. So, if it's quite an incentive to get yourself heaven bound if you believe that it's separation from God, and that's a spiritual or emotional torment, or bodily pain for all eternity like you've never felt. Like, I don't want to go to hell.
Yeah. And I mean, I guess either perspective of hell, from the people who take, the biblical accounts as literal, being actual pain and suffering of some kind, actual torment, whether it's that or it's kind of the other train of thought for most Christians is that it's just the eternal separation. Like I think you mentioned, either one. Yeah, most people would want to avoid that track. Go said, if you add cream and sugar to your black coffee and stir, did the black coffee die? Or alternatively said, does the black coffee turn into nothing? Does it go away? And he's making a philosophical point that I'm curious what the nothingness is, because that if we were playing a drinking game tonight and nothingness was the word, everybody would be totally shit-faced right now. So I wonder what the perspective is from everybody talking about nothingness. Like, what does that actually mean to you? I know Mystic said earlier in the chat that it's paraphrasing, but the feeling before you're born, which is nothing, and then that is the feeling when you die. It'll be a same or similar type of experience. Is that?
I think it goes with the loss of identity, because
okay,
and the loss of control. It's like, what if I'm what if I die and I don't have like this body, and I am like a little speck, and I just kind of like there, but nothing's really happening, and like it's the fear of the unknown, it's the fear of loss of control. I think that's what the nothingness is.
I get that. So those would be like, I guess maybe symptoms of nothingness. I want to know what is nothingness. Like if you had, because those to me are like, those are symptoms of it. Nothingness, the reason nothingness makes me anxious is because of those things. But we're still not defining the word. We're trying to explain it by other means. I can't like adequately explain it, so it's not a gotcha. I'm not trying to like make anybody look stupid. I would not be able to answer this question at all. So I'm curious if anybody's like, yeah, I have a grip on how to explain nothingness. Nat said the only way I can explain nothingness, technically impossible, is for me to be a speck of dirt in a sea of quiet and dark forever. That's my personal hell. And that's kind of how I perceive death during my atheism days. Was it's just so insignificant. But even that is like too much, because that is somethingness, which she said, because she said it's technically impossible. A speck of dirt in a sea of quiet and dark forever. And I think that's what a lot of people imagine, is just everything goes black. You no longer think, you can't see, you can't hear. But that visualization implies still consciousness, because it implies that like something is still running, but you lose all these peripheral experiences and ways of intaking information.
Yeah, maybe nothingness isn't the right word then.
What
would be the right word then?
Void.
Well, there's a
Void.
lot of nights when I sleep that I don't dream. And so, it's nighttime, I go to sleep, I wake up, it's morning time, but there's no concept of time, there's no feelings, there's no visuals, there's no smells, there's no sights, there's nothing, and
Yeah,
that's the
sleeping
only
forever.
experience that I've had that I could describe as nothing, is I dreamed of nothing,
Sensory deprivation.
Which is
But
no
those are
memory.
peaceful,
Oh, I
beautiful-
like that. Still, I like that one.
Those are peaceful, wonderful nights of sleep, though. Like, it's not bad. It's not a negative, but it's also, I guess, not a positive, because it's not a dream or a nightmare. It's just nothing.
Right. It's like, it's a neutral, you could say. Ghost said nothingness would be like when you're driving down the road in one direction and you're not driving in other directions. I think nothingness is tied to focus and perception. But doesn't that still imply something?
That's like contrast.
Yeah.
Focus and
Yeah.
perception requires something at the core. Nat said, I agree. That's why it's even scarier. Everything we could imagine is literally unimaginable, because 20 can only perceive of what
We can only perceive.
We can only perceive of what we have experienced. Right. Which I've harped on 1,000 million times, very annoyingly, is that we're very, very, very confined. We can't explain things that we haven't experienced in some way. It's just like, that's how this reality works. Trying to do, even when we try to explain things of other realities, we're explaining them from the perception and the perspective of this reality, which makes us kind of seem like cocky, where even things outside of our entire existence and reality and world and universe and everything, for some reason, needs to play by the rules of this reality. But I know I'm kind of on the fringe on that. Kat said, I imagine having all of the babies when I go. That's the only thing that keeps me mostly unafraid of death. If hell is what you make it while here, why wouldn't it be like that for heaven? Nothingness is all of the things you're not doing in the moment. I don't think actual nothingness exists. It's a placeholder concept. I think that's the best you can get. Yeah. I think consciousness can only be transformed, not destroyed. I agree. How is everyone's headache? So then this begs the question then, when does consciousness begin? Because on this train of thought, consciousness can only be transformed, not destroyed. So from our existence now to death, it gets transferred into some other kind of vessel or body. When did it begin to exist? Is that point of conception? Or was that prior?
I would say so.
Conception?
But I mean, I'm just assuming.
I think it'd be odd if like the rules applied to the conception of consciousness, but then they didn't die. Well, I guess that's not fair. If they didn't apply
Probably
them
with
to death.
the Chizimsum thing.
Oh,
Simsum?
yeah.
Does anyone have
Ghost
any
got
thoughts
you
on
on
like
that.
reincarnation?
Say that again.
Does anyone have any thoughts or ideas on reincarnation, or do we all just kind of like no?
We
I
did
used to kind of believe in it.
we did one of these on it last year.
My bad.
No, not your bad. I'm just saying, like, we had a good it was an interesting conversation about it. We should do it again. I think Ghost has some thoughts about reincarnation, but I personally don't. I think in a sense you get reincarnated, but not in like the traditional sense. I think what we're all kind of saying is reincarnation. It's just not like the Hindu version of it, where you come back as a squirrel or something. I think from consciousness out of this body, you incarnate into something else. The layman said, I think reincarnation is at least on the table, biblically. Yeah, we should definitely do reincarnation again. I'll add it to the list. The layman, you need to come.
What about hell being like reincarnation? Like you just keep coming back in this in like a body on Earth until you
It's like groundhog.
until you like win or whatever.
Would that be
Yeah.
hell though? What if people enjoy
I feel
it?
like what that is a false hope, you know, that you're playing this game on easy mode. Like you're playing on an extremely hard mode where you get one life, you get one shot, you get one set of experiences that you have the free will to craft. But to think that you get to just hit pause or restart or, you know, do this 1,000 times till you get it right seems a little like the math isn't there for me, I guess. And it does definitely still require a creator who's creating massive amounts of souls. Like if you really like the Hindu version of it, where that would mean every mouse or elephant or cow or spider has the possibility of containing the same type of soul that we have. Like for me, what it comes down to is like, don't you think that it's significant that as humans, we have the ability to even have this conversation, this, like we're talking about abstract ideas that fall outside of the creation into eternity. And we don't see examples of any other species having that kind of philosophy or thought or these thought experiments. Like we've been given the ability to look inside the toolbox, even if we don't understand what the tools are or what we're seeing. Like we're able to have these thought experiments. Like I think this life is deeply significant just because we're creatures who can think about these things.
Yeah, but when did that start? The only reason I'm asking that part is I did see one piece of reincarnation that did seem really interesting, where it was like a 6-year-old boy and he was having these, you know, reoccurring nightmares of being murdered, and he said his name used to,
Oh my god.
you know, I'm sorry.
No, I can actually talk now. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I didn't mean to cut you off.
But he just had these memories of being murdered. He said his old name was blah blah blah, his mom's name was blah blah blah, and apparently like at the age of 2 he actually was murdered by a babysitter. Right. In this, you know, scenario that actually did seem kind of convincing. But so he didn't have that opportunity, you know, to have the same mindset and experiences to the degree that you were describing. You know what I mean?
Everybody's got different experiences for sure. Lives are cut short in the womb, and I don't think they get a redo either. And I don't disagree with his experience. I personally, that seems demonic. Like I think if you're dealing with demons, there's times where you will experience their thoughts. Like you don't have past lives necessarily, and this is just my thoughts on it.
No, I know.
But I would say a demon is tapped into your conscious. You're also tapped into theirs, and you could be seeing things they've experienced for thousands of years think that's reincarnation, but
at 2
it's not
though.
technically.
And I'm not trying to, I'm just trying to push back only because I always believed what you just said. I was always taught that, and it was almost like everything was, just to write off as demonic, and it's not necessarily. There has to be fruit, in my opinion. I don't think it's fair to just say certain things are demonic because we don't really understand it. So I feel like in that situation, there wasn't, like, I guess, yeah, the bad thing would be the kid had nightmares. But I mean, if it aided in a conviction.
Well, I'm not saying the kid did anything to open a door or deserve a demon, but
No, I know.
Leviticus and Deuteronomy are pretty clear that there's also generational curses. There's generational open doors that an ancestor could have done. And, to me, that makes more sense than he's remembering a past life. Not because I don't think the soul is capable of that. It's where's the connect between the matter of your brain that develops and stores memory and all these things when it was created from a single cell like 2 years ago. Like, how did you get the memories in?
I guess for me, the connect, in that circumstance, when it comes to the connect, what makes it demonic though? That's what I kind of push back on. And like I said, I'm not saying anything against you. I just know I was always taught this. Many believe this way. And I just think it's kind of a,
I believe you. I think for me, it's the nightmares, it's the negative emotions, the negative experiences. Like, I don't think God's trying to give this kid nightmares of a murder, So it seems demonic. Like, seems like meant to influence you negatively.
Well,
but I don't know.
If you guys want to continue that, do it in Discord so we can move on. Nat wants, because that gets hot. I get what both of you are saying, actually. It's an interesting conversation. Nat asked, though, she asked for biblical evidence. So let's move into that, because that's lighter, too. It's not children, dreaming about murder. It's a much more family-friendly topic. So from the New Testament, there's actually a lot. There's actually like a lot. The Old Testament less, because we're talking Jewish, Christian. Jewish outlook on afterlife is severely different than the Christian outlook, but there are obviously similarities. So a few. And actually, let's start here. John 11:25 through 26. Jesus said to her, I am the resurrection and the life. The one who believes in me will live even though they die, and whoever lives by believing in me will never die. Do you believe this? Asking for confirmation. It's Jesus' promise of eternal life. It's relatively clear. On its own, by itself, you could do all kinds of gymnastics to talk it away. No problem. Good thing there are dozens of other verses saying the same thing and other sort of confirmations. John 14:2 through 3. My Father's house has many rooms. If that were not so, would I have told you that I am going there to prepare a place for you? And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come back and take you to be with me, that you also may be where I am. Relatively clear assurance of a place in whatever is after. Can you do gymnastics? Of course. You can gymnastic and flip your ass the way out of basically anything if you try hard enough. But there's a lot. 1 Corinthians 15:52 through 54. In a flash, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet, for the trumpet will sound, the dead will be raised imperishable, and we will be changed, which I think ties into some of the stuff we were talking about earlier. Transplant. For the perishable must clothe itself in the imperishable, sounds like a transfer, and the mortal with immortality, sounds like a transfer. Sounds like that which is mortal here, which would be the body, will be ditched, and something else will be used as a vessel. I don't like to say body, because I feel like most people immediately perceive a human body, because I do. But transferred into something. Paul is describing the transformation at the resurrection. 2 Corinthians 5:8, we are confident, I say, and would prefer to be away from the body and at home with the Lord. Less clear, but there nonetheless. Hebrews 9:27, just as people are destined to die once and after that to face judgment, meaning after you die, something will happen. And these more like in passing examples are dozens of them, where the author is trying to express one point, and he very clearly tells you that you're going to die, but it's not the end, almost as like a side note, because it was so commonly talked about, it was so well acknowledged and assumed that they didn't harp on it very much. They just blow right past it. Just as people are destined to die once, after that you'll face judgment, and then it goes into that. It's basically a side note, because everybody was so on board with the concept. For God so loved the world that he gave his only son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Another one that's super, super clear. Very truly, I tell you, whoever hears my word and believes him who sent me has eternal life and will not be judged, but has crossed over from death to life. It just goes on and on and on and on. So if you guys want me to put some of them, now if I can put probably 50 plus in the Discord. But there's because what Nat had said, I guess for context, she had said, I guess another quick question I have for you all is, how did you come to the conclusion that there is some sort of life after death? Any biblical evidence I should turn to? So that's why I went into this. She said, I'm desperate for something to reference that's actually been useful to people who think like us. Ghost and I both mentioned the philosophical, because we're kind of on that track. He brought up science too. I think a lot of science points to, you're just not going to find it in, like, from what's his face, Neil deGrasse Tyson. You're going to have to dig a little deeper and find the other side of the scientific world that isn't bought and paid for. But when you do, there's good information out there. So the scientific, the philosophical, and the theological is certainly there. The scriptural is certainly there. The people who were closest to Jesus, and Jesus himself for sure, seemed extremely confident that this was just a portion. This was a piece. This was transient. And at there will be a transformation at the time of resurrection. Go say within the universe, or we already went through that here. It's a cop-out to do something you don't understand, saying it's demonic. Oh, okay, we're not going into that. Go said, yeah, I don't think the past life stuff is necessarily demonic, but it can be. It requires context. I think all that stuff requires context. I want to get past the demon stuff. I look at the universe as a divine transmission. We accelerate to a certain speed, then we shift up so we can go faster. This pattern repeats. I don't know how many times or where it ends. That's an interesting way to look at that. I'd have to ponder on that. We are all just a small part of an elaborate growth cycle. Patricia said it probably doesn't end. Mystic, your mic is working. Did you want to come in? I'm sure you can bring up whatever we were talking about.
Oh my god!
At the time,
I have so many thoughts. I don't even know anymore. For where we are right now, though, this is where I always have the biggest issue, because I see in the Bible that there are so many verses that talk about, like, yes, there is an afterlife, and yes, we're those who, like, this is what, I don't know, this is what boggles me. Like, it says those who believe are going to be the ones who have eternal life. But what is the standard of belief? Like, do I just have to believe? Or, like, how do we, like, I think that the whole, like, well, how do we get to the place we want to go after we die? You know what I mean? And I think that it's so complicated, because the Bible, a lot of times the Bible says, like, if you believe in God. But then Christians or people around us will say, well, you're not believing the right way, or you're not doing it the right way. So it's like, how are we supposed to do it the right way, or solidify and absolutely know that we're ending up, I mean, in heaven, or whatever you want to call it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Do you think anybody doesn't know if they have, just say it in the most, like, cookie cutter way, that they have a relationship with Jesus Christ, their Lord and Savior? Do you think there's anybody who has it but doesn't know it? Or do you think everybody who has it is blatantly aware that they've made some kind of connection to beyond the veil?
This is so difficult for me, because I will honestly say yes, that because I've experienced it and I know. But the problem is the way I have a relationship with God and the way I've met him is completely different than other people that I know. Like a 100% contradictory. So I'm not in the position to say, well, they're wrong. They don't know, they're manipulating themselves. They don't, I'm in no position to say that. So because whatever is real for everyone. I want to say, just because we're all spirits living in a body, I just think that it'll be the same for everybody. So why are some people so earnestly experiencing it 100% different than someone else?
So follow-up question then. Does the way that you experienced it or experience it, does it in any way blatantly spit in the face of the Bible?
No.
Okay. So I think I totally get what you're saying, and there's nothing but validity to it. But I think, and you kind of alluded to it, is that I don't think this go to the altar, have people cry, touch your shoulder during a really emotional worship song. I don't think that's what salvation is. I think it's a money grab.
Yeah.
And an emotional manipulation to get you to be a congregant and all that bullshit. I think people experience God in all kinds of ways. The day, I guess you could say that, like, I was like, oh shit, this is real. That's as good as it got for me. I never really got anything magical or anything, but it clicked and it never unclicked. It was very, very counterintuitive to, what happens when people get saved at church. I think a lot of, to like sound like a dick, but the real ones, like the people who have actually experienced something in that realm, I think most of those stories are contradictory to like what the culture teaches. And so what that's done, in my opinion, is it's pushed everybody on the outside and made you and me and a lot of other people here, even in this little group, feel like we've done something wrong, or that maybe it's inauthentic, or that there's some heretical bullshit behind what we've done, when I think it's actually the reverse. I think a lot of people were emotionally manipulated into believing that they had an experience with God, when really they just had an emotional experience in a building. But it's caused this weird shift in understanding of like the Christian culture. If what you experience, this is all obviously my opinion, so whatever. But I think if what like an individual experiences that is God, as long as it doesn't dramatically and blatantly spit in the face of like the Bible, I think it's impossible for somebody to tell you that it's invalid. That's my opinion.
I completely agree with that. Especially with the more evangelical side, or the charismatic, whatever, like that type of side that you're talking about. Because that, obviously, I mean, we talked about it like 1,000 times. It's what the majority of my background is. But recently, what's been really on my mind and like really getting me to challenge all of this is a lot of stuff on the other side, like Reformed teaching or Calvinism and stuff like that. That's what's been challenging me. Like, well, maybe I have just been so thoroughly sold a lie just because like I wasn't like one of the ones that God chose, or he chose me to fulfill his like plan of wrath. You know what I mean? That's what's been, I don't know, like the whole belief that some people were born just to fulfill the wrath of God.
It's the worst theology ever. It's the worst.
Yeah.
It's the worst.
We need to talk about spiritual abuse and kind of define that at some point.
Oh, we have. Because Mystic has a very specific background in the church.
It is, and it's so weird because all of the, I don't mean to cut you off, all of the evangelical stuff and all of that I have talked about on here has deeply affected me. And I feel like I have really gone through, I don't know, I don't want to say therapy because I haven't been to therapy, I'm not going to lie, but like I've done a lot of the internal work and none of that affects me anymore. And I'm thankfully very healed and over it. But recently,
you're teeter-tottering to the other side of the spectrum, though, Mystic.
Well, no. Yeah, I know, but that's because of influence I've had from my family. But
that's the same thing. That's the same thing. You're teetered from your poor experiences with the charismatic Christians to now teetering to the other side with developing poor experiences with the Reformed Christians.
I know it's so different. I know.
You need to
But in my mind, it's
disconnect.
really,
Get
yes,
away.
but
It's
I
her
know,
journey, though,
but the
Joe.
thing
It's
is,
hard.
with the reason why the whole Reformed, that kind of doctrine has been really difficult for me to get through is because it puts so much authority on God, which I'm not saying that's like a bad thing, but like it puts so much on God that it's like, well, none of my choices, nothing I do, almost my whole perception is invalid. So then I'm like, well, what if that is true? And then all this other experience. So it's like
Right.
the evangelical is more like all of the perception on humans is on human, like all the authority is more on humans and what they choose to do with their free will. And that's easy for me to be like, oh, well, that's stupid. And like, whatever. But it's hard for me to let go of like, well, what if God does have ultimate like control? You know what I mean?
Then what's the point of anything?
That's why I'm going back to it.
There's
exactly.
no
So
point
now
to
I'm like, well,
anything.
you know what? Nothing matters. And this is
Right.
actually what I was going to say like at the beginning. In terms of death and dying, I used to be so scared of it. I used to be so scared of dying because I was like, oh, I'm doing everything wrong. I will never be perfect. And God hates me. Like, that's how I grew up. And that sounds I know how it sounds. And once I left the church and everything, and once I did all of the work and stuff, I was just like, well, I know that I'm being honest. And I know that I'm honestly, like, I came to a point where it's like, I don't care what is true. I'm just going to believe it because I'm so afraid of being wrong. And so I was like, I just was really
It's like
open
insurance.
to everything being the possible. Yeah, I was like, I'm open to anything being possible because I know that I'm never going to know it all. So whatever is true, and I'm going to hold on tight, basically. But now I'm like, whatever happens is supposed to happen. And whatever happens is natural because death happens to everybody and death is natural in this reality we live in. So I'm like, the things I go through that are so difficult in life, I got to the point where, you know, even when I am extremely sad or extremely just in a really tough place, I'm like, well, this is supposed to happen because it's happening. I don't think anything that happens isn't supposed to happen. So if I'm supposed to die, it's going to happen. And I don't think it's going to be bad because my entire existence isn't bad. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a really healthy way to view all of it. I don't adhere
and
to
it could
the
just
same.
be a tap out, honestly.
No, it's acceptance.
Because it's like, it's acceptance because like after everything, I don't know if it's like I'm just so tired. Like I'm just so tired, like, you know.
I mean, probably in part, but that's just reality. Like that's reality. If terrible things were happening just in your personal life, nothing tragic, but just bad thing after bad thing after bad thing, at a certain point, the rational mind will say, okay, I expect bad thing. Bad thing will no longer make me feel anything at all. It's not a cope. It's a healthy way of experiencing the world and not being just tore apart. It's very healthy. It's very good.
Mm-hmm.
It's good to hear. Yeah. What? Oh, you got a lizard?
Just her extended peep.
This long body. Let me see. There you go. I think it's good. I like how you explain that. Ghost said too. He said that's the best mindset. Mystic. It's a very healthy way to perceive things. Even if some of it is kind of a cop and you're just like sick of it.
Yeah.
Like I just want to be done. That's the reality too. Like you're going to die.
My biggest struggle with that too is like the whole purpose thing. Personally, I don't really care. Like I have a purpose. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. And I don't know that, whatever, it'll be done. But my biggest thing is the way I tangibly behave, like what I'm supposed to believe, what I'm supposed to do, and what I'm supposed, like Christians, you know, are very big on telling people how they are supposed to behave and how they are supposed to live their lives and who they're supposed to surround themselves by. That I'm like, I now have no drive to navigate that other than my own intuition, which is obviously for me like kind of challenging. So that's like the only downside that I have felt to feeling the way I do about death.
Yeah, I mean, that's understandable. I think all boiled down, everybody here at least, is like understands in full that nobody knows what the Bible actually says. We all have ideas, and everybody's got a general sense for a lot of the really important stuff. But as far as like Christians telling other Christians what is right and what is wrong, it's just asinine. It's the blind person calling another blind person blind. It's just stupid as shit to watch. It's embarrassing to watch, as if anybody has an actual grip. So the things that are obvious, like we have a general sense for, the things that are not, like require acceptance and understanding. And I think doing what we all do, where we, argue and talk about them and wonder and opine. And that's the best you can get. And then it still all leads back to the same thing that you opened with, which is like you felt like you experienced something from not here. Others have felt that same thing. None of it, maybe it doesn't align perfectly with like what you believe to be in the Bible, but it doesn't spit in the face of it. I think that's almost as good as you could get. It sounds extremely messy. It sounds not good. And like you shouldn't feel confident or secure in that. But in reality, without being delusional, it's probably the best anybody could possibly get. Is like, it's not definitely wrong. It's not definitely right, but it's somewhere in the comfortable middle. And that's as good as it gets without you being delusional. And that's what most Christians are, is delusional. I think it's good. It's nice to hear. It's positive, even though it may not feel positive all the time. I think it's positive.
Yeah, that's
the irony.
A good reaction.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, I'm like, okay, so if someone's saying how I am navigating all of this is positive, then I'll say I did well.
I think
everything.
I think you did. I think it's good. I think it's very healthy. I think it's as good as it gets here. If you're not deluding yourself and you're a person of rational mind who's actually trying to think, I think it's as good as it gets. I think anything else and you begin to shade into delusion of some kind. Nat said, Kat, I'm so jealous of you being in a cute pregnant phase. Oh, that's so true, girl. That's so true.
Wait, how many weeks?
17.
If you just get a good little gecko like this, then you'll look a lot cuter.
No,
Life hack.
just have more babies. Always cute. Always cute. Layman said, like, why would a Calvinist God use prophets and say, if you do this, then da da da, but if you do this, then da da da? If Calvinist God already knows what's going to happen. The Calvinist theology is the most nonsensical garbage that could possibly exist. Of all of the theologies, and many of them are super silly, the Calvinist is the silliest, beyond, in my opinion, and hopefully
It's so hard that it's so hard to debate against, though.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's just me or like.
No, it's the easiest. It's the easiest.
Maybe I think it's because I don't know the Bible like as well, good enough in the eyes of a Calvinist to be able to.
Well, the thing is, they know their end, and honestly, Calvinists are the best debaters. I'll admit that 100%. Calvinists specifically online, but Calvinists in general are really, really good at adversarial conversation with other Christians. So they know what's going to be thrown at them. They know what they're going to use, and everything basically comes out of Romans. And a lot of what's in Romans on its own makes a really good case for them. So unless you, like you said, know the rest of the Bible pretty well, and you can pull in the rest of the content that they choose to ignore, it's hard. And I'm not surprised like people get slapped around.
So I'm just like, if I debate with someone, like I need like a 3 business day heads up or something like that.
You just learn. You got to look into how to slap back to a Calvinist. Once you really like get a grip on what they believe, though, it's really not difficult. Even just theology, like take the Bible out of it completely. The way that they view and perceive theology it's irrational. It makes no sense. Or at the very best, it makes them evil, and it makes God extremely evil. Calvinists will straight up tell you that God predestined sexual abuse, I guess is the way I'll say it. You say, so God preordained that woman, that child to be R-worded. They will say, if they're being honest with what they believe, they will say yes. God predestined that.
What's their argument for that?
Well,
like,
they say just because we don't understand the reason doesn't mean there wasn't a reason. Who are you to be so cocky that you think you understand why God preordained certain things to happen? But they will, and even in like the upper echelons of scholarship, you can find debates on YouTube for sure, where they will straight up say that with a straight face.
So that's like the foundation of their debate is like, if it gets too hard, they just say, "Oh, who are you to say that?"
Yeah. Well, who are you to think you understand? Is what it always
Right.
boils down to. Why do you
Which
think you need to
is
understand?
true, but like you can't just use that as like a.
No, but they can and they do, and
attack.
that's why they win. Is because people aren't like they're not ready for it, but they always use the same stuff all the time. But no matter how you boil it down, if they're talking to somebody who knows the Bible relatively well, it all boils down to nothing. Talking to somebody who knows general theology or philosophy like relatively well, it all boils down to nothing because there's no logic in what they actually believe. And it all hinges on a handful of verses, predominantly from Romans. And if you can't just live out of Romans, aggregate the rest of the New Testament, and it demolishes the verses that looked good out of Romans. It's just silly. Why do Calvinists even debate? They're like the extreme political party of the Christians, is how I've always viewed them. They're the extremists. They're loud,
Yeah.
they're angry, they have this fake masculinity thing going on. It's depressing. But they like to do it, and some of them are really good at debating. Some of them.
But aren't all debates designed to kind of convince someone of something? So if everything's predetermined, then why?
Right.
No,
They're trying to
literally,
convince
that's
Right.
my thing. I know. It's like
It makes
God
no
already made all
sense.
these decisions. Why are you trying to convince me? And then I would just straight up say, "Well, I guess God didn't choose me, so stop talking to me."
It's literally
Mhm.
irrational.
The best answer.
The best answer. Predestined and predetermined aren't the same thing. I think that's a fundamental misunderstanding of Calvinism, right?
Joe, do you remember when you posted that meme a while back with Calvinism and it was like hashtag some lives matter? Do you remember that?
No, but I'll look when I get off.
I actually remember that, and I'm never on that thread.
You do remember that? Yeah, that was
Yeah,
funny.
I gotta look it up. I don't remember.
or channel. Wait, what are we on? Discord? Called it a
That
thread.
that was probably Instagram though, I assume.
Oh, I kind of remember.
This was like years and years and years and years ago, but yeah.
It sounds vaguely familiar. I'm gonna try to look for it though.
It
That's
must have been
funny.
recent.
I might have reposted it then.
Like if you did it again, yeah.
Yeah. Well, God he predestined that I do it again, so I did it again. Okay. Well, anything else before we wrap up? We got through not that much, so I'll save this and then whatever down the line I'll edit it and we can roll back into the same thing, or we'll word it in a different way, or kind of zone in on some of the things that we kind of rabbit hole down tonight, and then get into some more of this later on. But anything else? Any burning desires? Because I'm falling asleep. Yes, my love.
Psychedelics.
Oh, good lord.
Studies have shown that people who are who have terminal illness or just super duper afraid of dying, they'll do psychedelics in like controlled studies, real ones. And after experiencing that, they actually become less afraid of dying. They become less afraid of death. And I just think that shouldn't be overlooked. Also, ghosties aren't jammies. It's a little sweater. It has a convenient pocket to put my lizard.
When did the line between what are pajamas and what are not pajamas get so blurred?
I was going to ask the same question. Oh
This
my
was
God.
recent.
It was 2020.
I feel like it
after
was.
that.
Yeah, that's fair. Maybe that's when it got really bad. But I feel like when leggings became jeans and
Yes.
acceptable
Leave leggings alone.
in
No,
any
no.
environment,
Yes.
I think is when that slippery slope started.
Leggings are not pants, and I said what I said.
No.
Leggings
talking
are
about
definitely
jeggings?
pants. You will not catch me in jeans. Girl, do you know how much
Rodriguez and
I
Mystic
bloat if
disagree
I
with you.
take one gulp of air?
Yeah.
Like,
Same.
I literally, like, the line blurred whenever I decided that I was going to dress for my own comfort and sanity. That's, for me, personal.
We need to start a man's movement of leggings.
No, you don't need it.
Oh,
There's enough of
what is
something about
this?
what we're not doing right, and we're fine.
You can wear leggings inside the house.
I can wear leggings in the house?
Yeah.
Sometimes I do. What do you mean? When I get back from the gym in the winter,
Oh, that's
Very
kind of like
lucky.
I wear
that's
leggings.
kind of the ick. That's gonna give me the ick. Nothing else.
Yeah.
Like that's what that is.
This is equality is just being demolished right now in real time, and it is hurting my feelings. Cat is
I'm
just
all for equality, except that.
accept that. Accept your
Except men wearing
equality.
leggings. Absolutely not. That's where I draw the line.
Cat is just demonstrating her skinny
Hey, I
privilege.
just
Oh my god.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, I just wanted to can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you
Yes.
guys
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to bring up one thing before we all get going, because I know you're tired, Joe. Is speaking back about death and dying and being afraid. The one experience why I know we 100% go on, like our energy or whatever, our consciousness, was I think I brought this up before, but I can't remember. But when my dad was dying, he was in the active process of dying, and it was in the middle of the night, and my sister and I were the only ones left with him. And as I watched him take his last breath, he exhaled, and then my sister, her head was buried in the bed crying, and she was like really upset, emotional. And I was just like looking at my father, and I saw him take his last breath, and this feeling, this energy, this whatever it was, just coursed right through me and my sister. It brought her right up to her feet. Like, she wasn't even looking at him. She just like all of a sudden stood up. She goes, "What happened?" And I said, "Dad just died." And that, like, this feeling that went through me, and that what brought her right to her feet was like, I don't think there's any drug on this planet that could make you feel the way I felt. It was like if Jesus or heaven was a frequency or an energy, and you could feel it. Like, I think that really was what it was. Like, some people thought, well, maybe it was just all in your head. I'm like, well, it's all in my head, because my sister felt it too. And it was just like, I wanted to chase that feeling, because it was like, wow, like, oh my God. And so I know we go on. I used to be afraid of dying. I was raised in the Wesleyan church, and we all know that it was like very legalistic. And it was like, I just found out last month when I was doing some research that Wesley even actually thought hell was like eternal torment that you could feel.
Yep.
And they're more intense than that's for sure.
Yeah, that's how I was raised. And it's like a lot of us in the family are afraid of dying still, like a lot, because their life isn't, quote, Christian, they don't walk the Christian walk, and so they're afraid of dying now. And I mean, I'm more afraid of the process of dying, the pain that's involved with it, the going on afterwards. I'm just like, whatever is going to happen is going to happen, but I'm not afraid, but I am. I mean, I'm more afraid of the pain, just because I've seen so many people die in the process, and they're in so much pain, and I'm just so afraid of that. So
there's an ambivalence to it, right? Like, there's definitely both. You feel both.
Yeah. Yeah. Sure. And so I don't know, I just wanted to, share my experience about what I felt like. It was incredible. And it was like, I can't wait to feel that again. So wherever that is, however that is, yeah. And the no more pain.
Unexplainable, like hard to explain.
Yeah, it's unexplainable. Like it was totally unexplainable. Like, it was like, if you could put every good, like, feeling, like, how when you fall in love, you have this raise in oxytocin, you don't feel like eating, you feel like life, oh, this is a great feeling, or like any feeling, like the fuzzy warm feelings you have holding your baby, or like all of those really good feelings of love and whatever. If you could just, that's what I felt. It was like, wow.
Mm.
And I just can't wait to feel it again. I'm just, it was overwhelming to me.
It's really interesting.
Like it is, and it is, and it was like, and then like when my mother was dying, in the process of dying, it was unfortunate because we were exhausted taking care of her, and we fell asleep. And when I woke up, she had gone already. And because we were hoping that, we could be there when she took her last breath, but we fell asleep, and I was really bummed about that. But
Of course.
it's just like, but my dad also, he was a minister, Wesleyan minister, and if anybody could be a saint, it was my father. So I don't know. He was a very loving man and caring, and like I used him as like this is how every minister should be. A minister of the faith should be like my father. That's how I used him as the yardstick, the ruler to measure everybody up against him. And it's hard to find anybody like that, actually. But
possible.
Yeah, yeah.
Aw.
It's and then after my sister went to her sponsor bought her a psychic. It was a psychic fair, and she went to go see this spiritual counselor type person, and she recorded the what do you call it? The visitation, whatever. The session, whatever the specific word for that is. But it was very mind-blowing listening to that as well, and it really piqued my curiosity into like, can people really speak with those who have gone on? And it's like they don't actually see them. It's almost like a vibration they feel, or some kind of like matrixy kind of thing. Like that's how it was described to me, and it was it just really piqued my curiosity. And is this like, because she was talking to my father, and he was like saying things that she would never have known. Like he said that all my life I was wondering if I was preaching the right thing, and he says, all I know is God is real, is real. It was like a pun. My dad was a jokester and a punster, and I don't know. That's what
so
she said.
cool. I
He
never
said.
thought of that.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? Like the
Yeah.
correlation, the connection. But yeah, so that was, I'm not afraid of what's after. I'm just, I don't want to, I live in chronic pain as it is, and I don't want to go through much more. So, yeah. Anyways, so I do often wonder about reincarnation, though.
Yeah, I'm gonna put that back on the list. We did one
I'll
for
send you
anyone
the
who's
link.
interested. Yeah, okay. For the last one we did.
No, I'll find that then. But I meant like that, the one where I saw that story about the kid and.
Yes, yeah, do that. Yeah, I'd be interested to see
Joe?
it. Yes.
Joe, I can try. I don't know if I'll be successful, but I can try to get my friend who actually remembers a lot of his past lives. I can try to get him to join Discord, and I can try to get him to talk when you do have the reincarnation thing.
Yeah, I mean, if we're going to do that, see if he's willing to do it, and then I'll just specifically schedule that around him.
Does he have to join the Discord for that, or?
Yeah, he'd have to. I mean,
Okay.
he could just leave afterward, but yeah. Well, I guess
True.
I mean, no, if he's like not tech savvy, I'd do a Google Meet or something. And he doesn't have to show his face if he doesn't want to. It can just be a call. Right. But I could bring him in through Google, and then I could have you guys through Discord. It would be much easier if he came to Discord, though, for sure.
Okay. Yeah, I'll call him and let him know, see if he's even interested. Because, yeah,
it'd be cool.
Okay.
If he is, then we'll just schedule it around him. We just won't do a poll that week. We'll do reincarnation, and then if he says no, I'll put it on the list, and then we'll just vote on it like normal. But
okay.
But yeah, we'll do it again because it was really interesting. It was good. It's a good talk.
Right. Okay. Awesome.
Cool. All right. Anything else, guys? Otherwise, if you're watching this later, we have a Discord, obviously, because that's been up most of the time. There's a link to that at the top of the live chat. It's pinned. There's also a link in the description of all videos. We also have a another YouTube channel that we're doing all the live streams for Bible study from. And that is right here at Live Bible Study. No longer are they happening on this channel. They're all happening over there. And over there, that is all that is happening. Bible plus some extra biblical stuff. So right now, Sunday, we're in Genesis. Thursday, we're reading the Book of Giants, but we're taking a brief break and we're reading the Epic of Gilgamesh, which will probably go on for 1 or 2 more weeks. So this Thursday, and then, well, actually not this week, starting next week again.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So this week, obviously, Thanksgiving, we're not going to do it. I'll take that out of the Discord. But starting next week and then the following week, and then we should be done with the Epic of Gilgamesh. Then we're going to go right back into the Book of Giants, which will be there for realistically probably a few months. And I think that's
Happy
it.
Thanksgiving, guys.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy. Don't get mowed down on Friday, hopefully.
Oh wait, are we canceling the stream?
They don't do that anymore, Joe. Everyone does it online now. Cyber.
That's what I said.
Happy
I'm like,
American Thanksgiving.
why would I?
Oh, that's
Oh
right.
yeah,
Set
you're a
it up.
Canadian.
Happy Boxing Day or whatever. What do you guys have?
It's
Patricia.
nothing.
What?
Oh, it's nothing.
Just a regular all day.
All right. I don't know what to tell you. Enjoy your maple
But
syrup.
enjoy.
Happy Thursday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, happy Thursday.
Okay.
Have a good week.
All right.
Bye.
Love you guys. We'll see you Sunday.
Love y'all.
Bye.
Love you. Bye.